All right, pop quiz. What do your breakfast, your eardrums after a concert, and possibly your last argument with a GPS have in common? Chances are, an American inventor had a hand in it, probably by accident, fueled by questionable coffee, or just sheer glorious stubbornness. We're about to unbolt the laboratory doors on 49 such characters and their brainchildren. Some changed the world, others just made it a bit louder or more absorbent. Buckle up. 1. Now, for an invention that didn't just change music, it gave it a pair of brass knuckles and a distortion pedal, the electric guitar. George Beauchamp, bless his probably tinnitus-afflicted soul, unleashed this beast in 1931. Imagine a world without it. Teenage rebellions soundtracked by pan flutes, mosh pits replaced with polite barn dances, and Stairway to Heaven played on a kazoo. I shudder. Music festivals would be vast fields of people aggressively knitting to the soothing sounds of a recorder ensemble. Thanks to Beauchamp, at least our eardrums die a glorious death. 2. Let's switch gears to something a bit more radiant. The first practical solar cell blinked into existence at Bell Labs in 1954, with American engineer Darrell Chapin as one of the main guys coaxing electricity from pure sunshine. Now, solar panels are on every sensible roof, and probably powering secret alien bases in Nevada. But picture the 1950s. Telling someone you're going to catch sunbeams in a jar and make their toaster work? They'd probably offer you a comfortable white jacket and a quiet room. Good thing Chapin ignored them, or we'd still be sacrificing hamsters to the electricity gods. 3. Sure, some inventions help us escape the summer heat, but others encourage us to dive right into its most chaotic, waterlogged glory. The Super Soaker, arguably the most legendary water gun to ever ambush an unsuspecting family member, was engineered by Lonnie Johnson, an actual American aerospace brainiac, in 1989. That's right, a man who tinkered with stealth bombers and plotted trajectories to Jupiter decided humanity's most pressing need was a high-pressure device for drenching friends with extreme prejudice. I picture him in a pristine NASA lab, calculations for interstellar travel spread before him, suddenly yelling, "Eureka!" and then soaking his bewildered colleagues with a prototype. Probably earned him a stern talking to and a toy empire. 4. We all know Alexander Graham Bell as the telephone maestro, the reason we can order pizza without putting on pants. But here's the gut punch. His mother was hard of hearing, and his wife was completely deaf. His obsession with sound wasn't just a hobby. It was a desperate, lifelong quest to bridge a chasm of silence for the people he loved most. Suddenly, "Can you hear me now?" takes on a whole new level of poignancy, doesn't it? Makes my complaints about robocalls feel incredibly petty. 5. And now for an invention that declared war on quiet contemplation everywhere. The loudspeaker. American electrical engineer Chester W. Rice cranked this up in 1925. Before Rice, if you wanted to share your thoughts with a large group, you needed the vocal cords of a drill sergeant or a series of increasingly frantic interpretive dancers. Thanks to him, your neighbor can now share their questionable taste in polka music with the entire block at 3 a.m. So, next time a car alarm serenades you at dawn, you know who to ironically thank. Chester, you magnificent noisy bastard. 6. Okay, from making noise to hearing noise, or at least hearing it better. The first commercially successful electronic hearing aid, the Acousticon, was brought into the world by Miller Reese Hutchison around 1898. This wasn't just some fancy ear trumpet. It was like someone finding the universe's mute button and unpressing it for millions. Imagine the sudden clarity, which means you could finally hear your uncle's conspiracy theories about sentient garden gnomes in full, crystal-clear HD disappointment. A true game changer, though sometimes you wish that mute button still worked on certain people. 7. And here's a delectable little factoid. Campbell's soup, that iconic can of condensed, well, questionable tomato-adjacent fluid, wasn't just something to slurp on a sick day. It transcended the kitchen cupboard to become high art, thanks to pop artist Andy Warhol. Who knew that something with the nutritional profile of wet cardboard could achieve such cultural reverence? It makes me wonder if my collection of mismatched socks could be the next big thing in the art world. Probably not, but a guy can dream, right? 8. Let's not sidestep Richard Gatling, the gentleman who, in 1862, unleashed the Gatling gun upon an unsuspecting world. Now, here's the truly fascinating, if hilariously naive part. Gatling genuinely believed his rapid-fire invention would be so horrifyingly effective, so utterly devastating, that it would convince nations to just, stop fighting. Behold, chaps, the ultimate peacemaker. One look at this baby, and you'll all be trading war stories over tea and crumpets. As history so enthusiastically proved, humanity's response was more along the lines of, "Cool, how can we make more of these but bigger?" Oh, the sweet, brutal irony. 9. Speaking of things that now practically run our lives, or at least our anxieties about unread messages, let's type out a reluctant thank you to email. American computer programmer Ray Tomlinson sent the first network email in 1971. He's also the individual we can blame for the EUE symbol becoming the digital equivalent of a tiny, inescapable leash, forever tethering you to your inbox. I wonder if, in that pivotal moment of creation, he paused and thought, "This will be great for urgent work matters and also for Grandma to forward chain letters about lucky llamas." 10. Revisiting Bushnell's turtle submarine from the American Revolutionary War era. This pioneering piece of underwater stealth technology, intended to give British warships a nasty surprise, ended up being more of a damp squib. Its attempts at subsurface shenanigans were largely ineffective, probably causing more confused giggles than actual panic among the Royal Navy. One can almost hear the British lookout shouting, "Captain, there's a very determined barrel trying to give us a hug. Should we offer it a biscuit?" 11. From underwater blips to truly enlightening breakthroughs, Braille printers. While Louis Braille himself was French, American engineers like David Abraham were instrumental in developing and advancing the technology for Braille embossers and printers from the mid-20th century. These machines weren't just punching dots. They were transforming flat, inaccessible text into a tactile landscape. Suddenly, a world of books became a field of dot-based spoilers you could literally feel. Take that, audiobooks with your fancy narrators. This is literature you can touch and probably use to leave imprints on soft cheese. 12. Shifting to a profoundly life-altering innovation, the modern blood bank system. American surgeon Dr. Charles Drew, in the 1940s, didn't invent blood. That would be weird. But his groundbreaking work in blood plasma processing, preservation, and storage revolutionized transfusion medicine. He figured out how to keep life's essential fluid viable on a large scale, a bit like creating a very serious, very vital juice box system for humans. Thanks to him, countless people got a second chance, proving that sometimes the best inventions are the ones that just keep you from, dying. 13. And now for an invention that truly took flight, often with the grace of a drunken seagull heading straight for your potato salad, the Frisbee. American Walter Morrison is credited with its modern inception around 1948, initially calling his creation the Pluto platter. Imagine the park scene. Go long for the Pluto platter, Fido. Sounds less like a fun pastime and more like you're about to sacrifice your dog to an alien deity. Who knew a simple plastic disc could spark so many lifelong rivalries, broken sunglasses, and heated debates over, was that really out of bounds, Karen? 14. Let's not forget Thomas Edison's more niche contributions to early media. While he was busy electrifying the world and making sound visible, his Black Maria film studio was also churning out some of the planet's first moving pictures. And what vital, earth-shattering subjects did they immortalize? Dramatic reenactments? Scientific discoveries? Nope. They filmed cats. Cats boxing, cats playing with toys. So, if you thought your obsession with watching felines knead dough online was a modern affliction, think again. Edison was basically the OG cat video influencer over a century before TikTok. The man was clearly ahead of his time or just really liked cats. 15. Consider the humble, yet indispensable, retractable ballpoint pen. That satisfying click, that disappearing tip that saves your shirt pockets from looking like a squid, had an unfortunate accident in them. We owe this small miracle of engineering to American inventor Franz Seitz, who patented his version in 1950. Before Siege, carrying a pen was like playing Russian roulette with your laundry. He brought cleanliness and order to the pockets of writers, doodlers, and compulsive list makers everywhere. It's amazing how such a simple mechanism can prevent so much public ink shaming. 16. Fun fact. Baseball legend. Joe DiMaggio, Joltin' Joe himself, was the celebrity face shilling for Mr. Coffee. That's right, the Yankee Clipper hawking automatic drip machines. I guess after hitting all those home runs, a man needs a reliably mediocre cup of Joe to come down from the adrenaline high. Makes you wonder if his famous hitting streak was fueled by caffeine and questionable endorsements. Want a hit like DiMaggio? Drink this coffee and maybe wear this very specific brand of undershirt. 17. Here's a story that will give you a brain freeze of delight. The popsicle. It wasn't concocted in some fancy food lab. It was an accident by an 11-year-old kid named Frank Epperson in 1905. He left a cup of sugary soda mix with a stirring stick outside on a freezing night. Bam! Accidental frozen treat. Just imagine his little face, finding that sugary icicle. It's the kind of discovery that makes you believe in the magic of childhood, or at least in the magic of forgetting your drink outside in winter. Kids and their world-changing snack items, right? 18. Let's thread this needle carefully. The sewing machine. Everyone thinks Singer, right? Wrong. Elias Howe, an American inventor, got there first with a practical machine. Singer just muscled in later with better marketing and perhaps a more intimidating mustache. Imagine life before Howe. Every stitch by hand. Our ancestors must have had thumbs like leather anvils and the patience of saints. Or just really, really holy clothes. Thank you, Elias, for saving us from a world of perpetual darning and existential dread over lost buttons. 19. Now for something truly out of this world, the spacesuit. Those bulky, life-sustaining outfits that let astronauts do a casual moonwalk? Developed by a massive team of American engineers and scientists at NASA. These aren't just fancy overalls, they're personal spacecraft, shielding fragile humans from vacuum, radiation, and probably the overwhelming urge to take off their helmet and see if space really smells like burnt almonds. Imagine your next hiking trip, but on Mars, with a slight chance of explosive decompression if your zipper snags. 20. Let's talk about keeping cool, but in a way that involves less electricity and more personal airflow. The handheld, battery-operated fan, that little lifesaver at stuffy concerts or during power outages, was significantly popularized and made practical for mass consumption by American inventors in the late 20th century, building on earlier, clunkier designs. Imagine before these pocket-sized wind machines. People just fanning themselves dramatically with large leaves or folded newspapers, looking like background characters in a Tennessee Williams play. Now we can generate our own personal breeze without breaking a sweat. Or the bank. 21. Here's an everyday item with a surprisingly textured history. Toilet paper on a roll. American inventor Joseph Gaiety gets the credit for producing the first commercially available version in 1857. Before this blessed invention, folks used, shall we say, more rustic alternatives, leaves, catalogs, and the ever-popular corn cob. Let that sink in. Corn cobs. Suddenly, that slightly scratchy two-ply doesn't seem so bad, does it? Thank you, Mr. Gaiety, from the bottom of our hearts and other places. 22. For the eco-warriors and sun worshippers among us, the solar water heater. Patented by Clarence Kemp, an American, way back in 1891. This wasn't just about a warm bath. It was one of the earliest practical steps in harnessing the sun's immense power for everyday domestic bliss. Imagine telling your 19th century neighbor you're going to heat your water with pure sunshine. They'd probably think you were a wizard, or at least dangerously optimistic about Baltimore weather. Kemp was basically a renewable energy hipster before it was cool. 23. But it wasn't all smooth sailing for Philo Farnsworth, the farm boy who conceived of electronic television. He had to battle the corporate behemoth RCA for years over patent rights. Imagine inventing something that would eventually broadcast moon landings, cat videos, and soul-crushing reality TV shows, only to have some suits try to swipe it. Good thing he eventually won, because a world without TV, that's a world where families might actually have to talk to each other. The horror. 24. On the subject of comfort food, or at least comfort, jaw exercise, chewing gum. American inventor Thomas Adams initially tried to make rubber out of chicle tree sap for things like tires. When that plan deflated faster than a cheap pool toy, he reportedly just popped a piece of the leftover material in his mouth, chewed on it, and thought, hey, this isn't half bad. Sometimes when life gives you inedible rubber, you just add some flavoring and market it as a breath freshener. Pure accidental genius, or just a really bored guy with strong jaw muscles. 25. For those who love the satisfying sound of things zipping up, let's acknowledge the modern zipper. Gideon Sundback, a Swedish-American inventor, significantly improved and patented the hookless fastener in 1913, making it the practical device we know today. Before this, getting dressed probably involved a frustrating array of buttons, laces, and possibly a team of highly trained valets. The zipper was a game-changer for fashion, practicality, and avoiding those awkward "your fly is down" moments. Well, mostly avoiding them. 26. James Naismith, the Canadian-American physical educator credited with inventing basketball, didn't just come up with the game. He apparently scribbled down the original 13 rules in about an hour. An hour. Most of us spend an hour deciding what to watch on Netflix. This guy designs an entire global sport. Talk about a profoundly productive afternoon. Makes you wonder what he could have accomplished if he'd had a whole day and a decent cup of coffee. World peace, probably. 27. Here's a piece of tech that went from top-secret military tool to, how did I ever find the grocery store without this? GPS. The global positioning system was developed by the U.S. Department of Defense starting in the 1970s. Initially for guiding missiles and soldiers, now it guides you to the nearest taco truck and helps you avoid your ex at the mall. It's kind of amazing how something designed for global dominance now just helps us argue with a calm, robotic voice about whether to turn left or really left. 28. Let's plug into the world of video games. The very first home video game console, the Magnavox Odyssey, was unleashed upon an unsuspecting public by American engineer Ralph Baer in 1972. We're talking blocky graphics that would make your smartphone weep and gameplay simpler than a game of tic-tac-toe. Yet this humble box of bleeps and bloops was the genesis of a multi-billion-dollar global industry. Every kid screaming at Fortnite today owes a debt to Ralph and his wonderfully primitive pixels. 29. On the subject of childhood companions that don't require batteries, the teddy bear. It was created by American toy makers Morris Michtom and his wife Rose in 1902. They were inspired by a political cartoon depicting President Theodore Teddy Roosevelt refusing to shoot a captured bear cub. So, a moment of presidential compassion led to millions of fluffy, button-eyed confidants for children everywhere. Hence the name Teddy's Bear. It's a lot cuter than if he'd, say, pardoned a badger. Badgery Bear just doesn't have the same ring. 30. And for those of us who cherish the art of avoiding actual phone conversations, the answering machine. American inventor William Muller patented a device for recording telephone messages back in 1949. This marvel allowed people to screen calls, gather messages, and generally pretend they weren't home when that annoying relative called. It was the glorious precursor to voicemail, the digital gatekeeper of our precious, uninterrupted alone time. Bill, we salute your contribution to introversion and plausible deniability. 31. Jumping back into the fascinating and occasionally terrifying world of medicine, the pacemaker wasn't the only mechanical marvel keeping tickers talking. The first successful implantation of a fully artificial heart into a human was performed by American surgeon Dr. William DeVries on Barney Clark in 1982. This wasn't just a repair job. It was like swapping out a faulty engine for a prototype that might, just might, get you a few more miles down the road of life. A groundbreaking, chest-cracking gamble that changed the game for patients waiting on the transplant list, giving them a shot when all other shots were fired. 32. Fun twist on our earlier electric guitar fact. George Beauchamp's pioneering electric guitar, one of the very first, was affectionately, or perhaps accurately nicknamed, the frying pan, due to its flat, round body and long neck. Who knew that the searing licks of rock gods had their visual origins in something you'd use to make Sunday morning bacon? It really puts a new spin on cooking up some hot tunes. Maybe early guitar solos came with a side of hash browns. 33. And here's a fun fact about the modern three-point seatbelt that makes you wonder about corporate priorities. It wasn't initially popular with car manufacturers. Can you believe it? They actually thought a life-saving device would scare off potential buyers, as if acknowledging mortality was bad for business. Safety features. Pfft, that'll never sell. People want chrome and the illusion of immortality. Now, we can't imagine driving without one, and those early execs are probably spinning in their graves, hopefully securely buckled in. 34. And here's a linguistic twist on the computer mouse. Douglas Engelbart, its inventor, originally wanted to call his creation the XY position indicator for a display system. Rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? Imagine yelling at your computer, "Curse this blasted XY position indicator for a display system." Yeah, mouse was definitely a branding masterstroke. Sometimes, simpler is just, not insane sounding. I wonder what he would have called a trackpad. The rectangular fingertip gliding interface? 35. Now here's one for the wordsmiths and keyboard warriors. Christopher Latham Scholes, the American inventor of the first practical modern typewriter, also co-designed the QWERTY keyboard layout we all know and occasionally curse at when we hit the wrong key. Yes, that infuriatingly non-alphabetical arrangement you're probably glaring at right now. Imagine inventing something so foundational that people are still pecking away at your design over a century later. Talk about leaving a legacy, or at least a really persistent finger memory puzzle. 36. Let's not forget the legendary George Washington Carver. Now, this guy didn't invent peanut butter. Sorry to burst that particular nutty bubble. What he did do was develop over 300 uses for the humble peanut, transforming it from a simple snack into a veritable Swiss Army knife of agriculture. We're talking everything from ink and plastics to, yes, peanut-based soap. Peanut soap! I mean, would you really want to wash your face with something that reminds you of a sandwich spread? Maybe if it was the extra crunchy kind for exfoliation? The mind boggles. 37. If you've ever basked in the glorious, life-affirming chill of an open refrigerator on a sweltering day, you owe a frosty thank you to Jacob Perkins. This American inventor patented the first practical vapor compression refrigeration system way back in 1835. Before Perkins, keeping your food from becoming a science experiment involved a lot of ice, hope, and probably some very suspicious-smelling leftovers. He basically invented the modern cold shoulder for bacteria. We've all taken that cool fridge breeze as a mini vacation, don't lie. 38. Here's one that'll make you see the world a little clearer, or at least without those annoying smudges on your glasses. The modern hard contact lens. American optometrist Kevin Tuohy crafted the first all-plastic corneal lens in 1948. His invention offered millions the chance to ditch their frames and experience the world with an unobstructed and hopefully less fogged-up view. Imagine the sheer joy of not having your glasses slide down your nose for the 1,000th time. It was a tiny piece of plastic that made a huge difference to how people face the world, literally. 39. Let's shift to a truly monumental moment in science. Dr. Jonas Salk, an American physician and medical researcher, developed the first successful polio vaccine, announced to the world in 1955. His work didn't just prevent a disease, it liberated generations from the fear of paralysis and death. And here's the part that really gets you. Salk never patented his vaccine. When asked who owned the patent, he famously replied, "Well, the people, I would say. There is no patent. Could you patent the sun?" What an absolute legend. Makes you wonder about a few modern pharmaceutical companies, doesn't it? 40. Speaking of things that are dangerously addictive, let's talk potato chips. They were reportedly invented by American chef George Crumb in Saratoga Springs, New York, back in 1853. The story goes, a fussy customer kept sending back his fried potatoes, complaining they were too thick and soggy. Crumb, in a fit of delicious pique, sliced them paper-thin, fried them to a brittle crisp, and doused them in salt. Voila! The potato chip was born out of pure culinary spite. Never underestimate the creative power of an annoyed chef. 41. And speaking of making kitchen life less of a soul-crushing chore, the modern automatic dishwasher. It was invented by Josephine Cochran, an American socialite, in 1886. Legend has it, she was tired of her servants chipping her fine china during hand-washing. So, like any resourceful 19th century woman fed up with subpar dish doing, she designed a machine to do it better. Little did she know, her quest for unchipped heirlooms would eventually save marriages and countless hours of domestic drudgery for households everywhere. 42. Here's a cool fact. Air conditioning, that blessed invention that makes summer survivable in places that feel like the surface of the sun, wasn't initially designed for human comfort. Willis Carrier, its American inventor, first developed it in 1902 to control humidity in a printing plant, preventing paper from warping and ink from smudging. So, your ability to not melt into a puddle in July is a happy byproduct of trying to make better magazines. Thanks, Mr. Carrier, for accidentally making offices and homes habitable. 43. Now, let's tune into the story of television. Philo T. Farnsworth, a remarkably bright American farm boy, conceived of the first fully electronic television system as a teenager and demonstrated a working version in 1927. He supposedly sketched out his initial ideas for his high school science teacher. Imagine being that teacher. All right, Philo, so you're saying you're going to transmit moving pictures through the air using electrons? Ambitious, lad. Now, about that overdue homework on crop rotation. What were you inventing in high school? Probably just new ways to avoid gym class. 44. Let's get back to the kitchen for a moment, specifically to that noisy, churning beast under your sink, the garbage disposal. This handy device for obliterating food waste was invented by American architect John W. Hams in 1927. He didn't just want to design buildings. He wanted to conquer the stinky, messy problem of kitchen scraps. It saved countless hours of scraping plates and probably prevented a few million garbage-related pest infestations. Though, let's be honest, we've all accidentally dropped a spoon in there and prayed it didn't sound like a robot uprising. 45. Here's a shocker that might recalibrate your automotive history. Henry Ford didn't actually invent the automobile. Nope. That honor goes to folks like Carl Benz in Germany. What the American industrialist Ford did invent, or rather perfect, was the assembly line process. This innovation dramatically reduced production costs, making cars affordable for the average working stiff. Imagine cruising around in your Model T in 1908, feeling like the king of the world, even if it only came in black and topped out at 45 mph downhill with a tailwind. 46. Fun fact about Pong, that granddaddy of arcade games. The very first machine installed in a Sunnyvale, California bar called Andy Capp's Tavern was so unexpectedly popular that it reportedly broke down within days. The reason? It got jammed solid with too many quarters. Now that's what I call a successful product launch. Most inventors worry if anyone will use their creation. Nolan Bushnell had to worry about people literally breaking it with their enthusiasm and loose change. A good problem to have, indeed. 47. If you've ever nuked a burrito at 2 a.m. or impatiently watched popcorn explode in a countertop box, you can thank American engineer Percy Spencer. He stumbled upon the heating potential of microwaves by accident in 1945 while working on radar technology for Raytheon. A chocolate bar in his pocket melted. A chocolate bar. Not some complex scientific equation, but a gooey, delicious mishap. So next time you're reheating last night's questionable leftovers, remember it all started with a sweet treat and a moment of, huh, that's weird, and warm. 48. Fun twist on Thomas Edison, the man of 1,000 patents. The very first thing he ever successfully recorded on his newly invented phonograph was himself reciting the nursery rhyme, "Mary Had a Little Lamb." Not some profound scientific statement or a declaration of inventive triumph, but a children's rhyme. It's somehow perfectly humanizing. Imagine capturing sound for the first time in history, and your immediate thought is, let's lay down this sick track about Mary and her ovine companion. Historic and slightly adorable. 49. Here's a big one, especially if you live anywhere south of the Arctic Circle. Modern air conditioning. invented by Willis Carrier, an American engineer, in 1902. That's right, we wouldn't have summer as we know it, or rather, we wouldn't survive summer in many places, without him. He didn't just cool air, he made entire regions of the planet comfortably habitable year-round. So next time you step from oppressive heat into a gloriously chilled building, whisper a quiet thank you to Willis. He's the reason you're not currently a puddle. And there you have it, 49 reasons to either marvel at American ingenuity or seriously question the sanity of some of its brightest sparks. Now, I want your unfiltered, possibly unhinged take. Which one of these inventions absolutely needed to happen? And which one, if erased from history, would make the world a significantly better, or at least funnier place? Don't hold back. Let the comment section become a glorious battlefield of opinions. And if your brain feels slightly more packed with peculiar knowledge, show that like button some love and hit subscribe so you don't miss our next foray into the wonderfully weird.